your Divas division.
Look whose show you're on, sweetie.
I did it, you bitch.
I think every single diva should be lining up and congratulating me and thanking for everything I've done for them.
You're going to find out why I am the boss.
Kamusta mga kontrabida? Welcome to Turning Heel with Troy Gonzalez. I'm your host, yours truly, and we're back with another episode of Who's That Girl? My favorite interview series where I sit down and chat with women in wrestling from all around the world, both inside and outside of the ring. But today's guest is absolutely incredible. She has a total of not one, not two, not three, not four, not five, but 6 championships, you guys. She said, let me snatch everything in this wrestling industry. And she's also quite historic and revolutionary. She's the first Vietnamese-American women's wrestler, and as I said, she's a multi-time champion, and she has the FSW and PCW Ultra Women's Championships, among others. So you've seen her on AEW and Lucha Libre AAA, and she ranked an astounding number 50 on last year's PWI Women's 150. So kontrapidas, handa na ba kayo? Who's that girl? It's the Hellbent Vixen, Viva Van. Hi, Viva. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
Of course, it's an honor. And as I told you before we did record, one of my goals with this podcast is to showcase Southeast Asian talent, specifically women in the wrestling industry. So I'm really excited to talk about that later on. But how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. One of my puppies, she just passed away 14 years, so that has been very mentally hard. But I've been still pushing through and physically and mentally preparing myself for my upcoming match at PCW Ultra this weekend.
Right. Well, I do want to share my deepest condolences. I'm sending strength and love to you because I may not have a pet of my own, but I always wanted to have a puppy. One of these days, maybe it could happen, but I can't imagine like losing someone that close to you, someone that I believe you grew up with. And so my heartfelt condolences with that. But I'm really excited to speak with you today regarding pretty much everything about you from your non-wrestling activities into your wrestling career, because it's been a crazy journey, and I hope to give you some sort of reflection on what's been going on so far with Viva Van. So let's jump right in. So you did mention in other interviews that you were once in college, and I believe you have a degree in marketing, but before that you took up accounting. Am I right?
Yes, that is correct.
All right. So I'm currently taking an accounting class myself, specifically managerial accounting. I have some
Power
thoughts
to
on it.
you.
I know I have some thoughts on it, but I wanted to ask you, what was your experience like in accounting as a major, and what made you decide to shift to marketing?
Accounting was hard for me to pick up, and also it was really repetitive for me, and I just did not like doing the same thing over and over again. And also just like I spoke to a counselor, and the counselor was like, once you graduate, you're still not done. You still have to go for your CPA.
Right.
And that's when I'm like, okay, I don't want to do that.
Enough.
I just, they suggested if you want to switch over, you can switch over to, you just move your focus to marketing, and it's still a business degree. I was like, you know what? I think I can work with marketing because that's fun and innovative, and it's always changing.
Right. And I know Billy Starks. When I spoke to her, she mentioned that she also had a marketing degree, and she said that it helped her a lot in terms of promoting herself as a wrestler, in terms of like marketing her merch. You do have Hellbent Glam, so has your marketing degree somehow helped you in that regard?
It helps me with like how I present myself, how I want to promote myself, what do I post next, how do I announce my next matches, and just like upcoming things, just to always like keep people engaged.
Right. So yeah, I feel like marketing is really like more, less technical than accounting. Oh my God, I struggled so much with financial accounting. I'm just like, just let me spend my money. I don't want to know where it goes. But yeah, it's extremely technical, and I have so much respect for people who know how to,
Yeah, me
properly
too.
do it. But it's just not for me. It's not for me. Accounting, no ma'am, no ma'am. But speaking of, I did mention earlier, Hellbent Glam, which is sort of like a cosmetic accessory brand, which by the way is vegan. Yes, we say no to animal cruelty. Um, but it's a different kind of cosmetic line. It focuses on the alternative chic sort of look and vibe, which I feel like growing up we didn't really have a lot of because we focus more on
Yeah.
like the quote unquote feminine sort of products. So I wanted to ask you, what inspired this whole like look, the alternative chic look, and how did you, you know, decide to apply it into your product?
I've been like wearing makeup, playing around with makeup since probably junior high. I love makeup. And I noticed that like the certain type of look that I go for a lot of smoky eyes look, which is more in
I
the alternative.
noticed. Right.
Yeah, and more in the alternative look. But I also like glitter too sometimes. So I'm trying to find like a balance between two without having to
Okay.
use three different palettes for just that one look. So that's how I
Right.
came up with my eyeshadow palette is, everything that I want all in one palette.
Right, right. Okay, I sort of see that because yeah, I said as I did mention earlier, like growing up, like in the times that we had before, there weren't really much of those alternative chic or like darker color like themed palettes when it came to makeup because most of it was like, the natural look, the more
Yeah.
light, the more bright blushes, which I feel like,
Yeah.
it's a cute moment, but it doesn't really represent all women's like we all have our own preferences when it comes to how we want to look. And I feel like
Mhm.
you with Hellbent Glam, it sort of, help those types of women who want to present themselves in that way to, showcase themselves with the way that they want to. So yeah, and I feel
Yeah.
like you always look amazing. I feel like it's a really great like brand. So I wanted to ask like how's it doing?
It's doing okay. I haven't released any new products, so it's just been the same product that I've had for the past year because wrestling is like has my full
Right.
attention right now, and I'm always traveling every week, so it's hard to like when I had started it, it was in the middle of the pandemic and I there was no wrestling going on where I was at. So I put all my focus into it and was able to release so much new products and then create new stuff. But like as of now, like wrestling is my number one and that is my number one focus. So that is where my main focus is. It's okay as of now. I could do more for it. It's just not my main focus right now.
Right, right. Well, it's always good to have some sort of we call this like additional source of income because
Yeah.
as we all know wrestling is such a tough industry when it comes to making finances. But yeah, I would say you're doing good, girl. You're doing amazing. You're looking good
Thank
doing
you.
it. And not every wrestler can say that they have a makeup line. We also do want to talk about a specific experience that you had, which I believe you've mentioned in other podcasts as well, where you had sort of small acting experiences back then. Because I sort of looked it up on YouTube. Diary of a Teenage Nobody, am I
Oh,
right?
wow.
Where you sort of appeared as an extra. I believe you still had like blonde or white hair,
I
like
had
half
half
white, half black.
blonde. Yeah, it was half
Okay.
blonde, half black, and they used me a lot because, since I'm just walking in the background, they're like, we can use her as two different people because she's blonde one side and black the
Oh,
other.
right. Oh, okay. That's
Yeah.
pretty smart. I actually didn't notice that, like that whole idea, but it's really
Hmm.
interesting to hear. But I wanted to ask, like, how did this opportunity come about, and would you ever consider more acting opportunities in the future?
So, I was an actress trying to do acting about like 10 years ago, and I went to Howard Fine's acting school, and I've met a lot of people. Like my coach there was Laura Gardner. She's on Law and Order a lot. And
Oh,
I met like other students in the same classroom with me, and like it was just a connection that we built. Danielle Anderson, which is an actress that has a good resume of her own. She's the one who told me, "Hey, we need extras for this new show that we're coming out." I don't think anything ever came of that show, unfortunately. So that was the pilot that we filmed, and I think the pilot it just
oh.
left it as at the pilot and it never went anywhere else.
I
Yeah.
see, I see. Well, I mean, it's a little like fun fact or like a trivia that it's somewhere out there in the internet that maybe not a lot of people knew. But who knew that that girl sitting on that chair in the middle of the classroom would soon become a multi-time champion? Who's wrestling all
Mhm.
over the world. So,
Yeah,
yeah, if you
and there
guys
has
want to
been a
see
few
that,
times that acting has came back into my life, and then it didn't work out.
ooh,
So Globe season 4, I was gonna be on that,
oh
and I'm
wow,
so sad when they canceled it because I had like 7 outfits, and it was a season that was based around indie wrestling, and I was one of the indie wrestlers that they picked for it. So
okay,
we had so many awesome like 80s outfit. I was like so excited to wear all of them, and we filmed only like
gosh.
one episode, and then they're like, we canceled. is canceled during the pandemic. But
Gosh.
I might have something coming up to Netflix very soon. So,
Ooh,
but
okay.
yes,
Oh,
acting
girl.
is always there. Even though wrestling is my number one, I don't think acting will ever go away for me.
All right, all right. Well, we'll see how that goes. I'm really interested to see whatever that may be. And speaking of wrestling, wrestling is basically somehow still acting. You have to put on these great promos, you have to put on great storylines. Wrestling as a whole is pretty much like under the acting industry in some regards. So, yeah, oh my god, I'm really excited to see whatever that whole project you have, whatever that may be, but when we find out, when we find out. But
Mhm.
speaking of wrestling, I believe you mentioned last year, I believe in a TikTok or was it some other platform, that you actually attended a WWE tryout back in 2020. So I didn't really know much about this. So I wanted to ask if you could shed some light on that experience.
Well, my WWE trial back in 2020 was 12 indie girls. We were all invited. We all knew each other, and it was my first heartbreak from
Oh,
WWE. But it was a learning experience, right? Because it lit a fire under me, and I started working
right.
even harder, and I ended up collecting titles after that. So
Right, right. I feel like it was, although it didn't come out the way that you wanted to, I feel like, as you said, it was a great way to motivate yourself to see, like, okay, maybe at this point in time, they don't see something in me yet, but guess what? I'm going to build myself up outside of WWE.
yeah.
And I feel like you've been doing absolutely amazing. I mean, you got 6 championships, and I'd love to talk about every single one of them, but like, there is just too much. But you are so accomplished, and you've appeared on so much wrestling shows as well. But I wanted to talk about those championships that you have. Isn't it
Mhm.
like, how does it feel like having 6 championships? Like, is it a struggle when it comes to traveling? And how do you like represent all those promotions where you're a champion in?
I try my best to represent all of them equally, and I know it's a lot. Like sometimes I have to make sure I don't accidentally double book because I want to
Right.
give them all the equal amount of attention and to represent them as often as I can. So it's definitely hard when it comes to scheduling next performances and next shows and making sure it doesn't land on the same day and how often I can come back. So it's hard, but I love it. And I feel like this is what I was meant to do. And I want to
Right,
get to
right.
10 like Ultimo Dragon.
Ooh, okay, okay. I will be seated for whenever that happens, and hopefully it does. But I wanted to ask, like, when it comes to traveling, is it not like a hassle? Because I've spoken to some wrestlers when it comes to traveling, specifically on flights. Like, they
Oh,
have to get extra baggage for their titles because they weigh like around 4 to 7 kilograms, and that's like the weight, I believe, the maximum weight that they allow in airports. Or maybe that's just here in the Philippines, but has it ever been like a hassle to, bring along with you overseas?
I always bring the ones that I need only. I don't try to
Ah,
bring
okay.
all of them because I am against checking my bags. I don't know. I have this fear of checking my bags and never seeing them again, and I don't want that to happen.
Okay,
So
okay.
I only try my best to bring the one that I need, and that is it. The most that I've traveled with is probably two or three, and that
Mm,
is
okay.
pretty hectic because even with just one title, and I go through TSA pre-check. I like get to like go in without having to take my shoes off or that extra measurements that other people have to go
Right.
through, and they still always pull me over to check my bag because they just like when they see it in the metal detector, they just have to check it for
Yeah.
safety reasons. And it's even with just one title, I always get pulled over to the side. So when it's with three, that's even harder. And then how
Right.
heavy it is, really heavy. So
True, true. And I can only imagine, like, say, for example, if that, like, security guard at the airport isn't a wrestling fan and like, is going to have a hard time trying to comprehend, like, why are you bringing like, these three big
yeah.
ass championship belts with you? And especially if, like, the belts are, because I've also spoken to some wrestlers here in the Philippines, and, like, the championship belts that we have here, some of them have, like, sharp edges. And so, like, the airport
Oh,
security's like, hold on, girl, what's this in your bag? What are you trying to do? But like,
yeah.
it's just the championship. So yeah, it's really interesting to see that, despite all of those championships that you have, you're still able to manage traveling with them. So yeah, really interesting fact over there. But let's talk more about your work on the independent scene. I believe on Cage Match, I've done my research. Just this year alone, you've already competed in two steel cage matches. So I believe one was against Maserati, the other being Johnny Robbie. So I wanted to ask you, like, what was it like stepping foot inside the steel cage for the first time?
Fun fact here, at Knox
Okay.
Pro, my school that I trained at, Knox Pro, there was a time where they had put up a cage match for one of our Twitch shows, and they didn't take it
Oh,
down
okay.
for like 3 months. So we kept training in that cage match. So it was like I was already used to it because I did it for
Okay.
so long at Knox Pro that when I actually did one, it kind of felt natural to me in a weird way.
Okay. Yeah.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Yeah, so Rikishi and my other trainer, Black Pearl, they prepared me for cage matches back in 2020 and 2021. So it was cool to finally do it outside of the school.
Right.
But I didn't like every time that I've had a cage match, it's just been like I feel like it's following me now. This type of match is following me now. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing,
Right.
but but here we go.
Right, right. And what insane matches those were, against Maserati and Johnny Robbie. And speaking of them, I feel like the women's division or like the women's independent wrestling scene over in Southern California is just so stacked with women like them. I've also had Milo on the show. Who else is there? Delilah Doom, who's more of a veteran. So, what are your thoughts on the growing women's wrestling industry going on in your area?
It's awesome to see it finally grow and flourish because there was a time where no one wanted to come out here. It
Right,
was kind of dead, during the beginning of the pandemic, and I remember there was a lot of wrestlers from like the West Coast that moved over to the East Coast because that's where all the wrestling was at, and felt a lot of FOMO for it. But now that the
right.
West Coast is open, I feel like we're like growing everywhere from Washington all the way down. I want to say even Vancouver, Canada, all the way down to like
Okay.
Tijuana, Mexico. We're thriving over here, and all the East Coast wrestlers they want to come out here now. So it's awesome to just
Right.
see the switch and the growth of it. I'm very proud of it.
Yeah, and I'm very proud of all of you ladies. Like, it's insane to see how much diverse talents there are in your area, and you guys are putting on stellar matches, and I'd love to speak with every single one of you, but I only have enough time in the world. But yeah, you ladies keep doing you. Now I wanted to ask you on your experiences more on the much bigger leagues, because you've had lots of opportunities to do so, because you have experience wrestling with matches on AEW Dark. But I'd love to hear more about your experiences and appearances in Lucha Libre AAA, because I feel like not everyone can say that they travel all the way to Mexico for that. For, I believe, how do you say this? Vida Aniversario 30, where you teamed up with Dynamico in a three-way intergender tag match. So I wanted to say, how would you say wrestling for AAA differs from all the other promotions you've worked for?
It differs as in I have no room to be scared. I have to go out there and
I
just do
see.
do the job because everyone out there, they're all high flying, they're all hard hitting. Um, there's no time for fear. There's no time to second guess yourself, and to be on a platform like AAA. Oh my gosh, like
Right,
you got to do it. You can't second guess. You can't say maybe I can't do this. No, you got to go all out. Every time I go to Mexico, I feel like
right,
I have to go all out, and I love it out there. The environment, the how like family oriented it is because I don't
right,
know, like families like go out to eat together or go to the movies together, spend time like that. But in Mexico, families they go to watch lucha libre. That's the thing.
Ooh, interesting.
Part
Well,
of the
I'd love to
culture.
have a family like that who watches
Yeah,
wrestling together. Too bad I'm
it's
the only
part of
one
the
who's
culture.
into it.
It will get there. I believe it will. It will get there one day.
Hopefully, hopefully. But I feel like, yeah, I feel like that inclination to family is a very Mexican, and also I feel like somehow a Filipino, and with some other Asian families, it's a very common trait to be family oriented, to look after your parents after they looked after you after all of these years. So that's
Mhm.
really interesting to hear. And yeah, other than Lucha Libre AAA and AW, what other promotions would you like to appear in?
I would love to do TJPW for Japan one day or Stardom, either or. I want to go to Japan. That is definitely a dream and a goal of mine. I definitely want to go to VPW and finally see the ring that we helped raise the money for.
Right.
Other promotions, like I really want to make it out to the UK too for Progress. That's another promotion that I've been looking at. So yeah, I just want to keep growing and keep even more East Coast stuff. Like I just recently did House of Glory in New York. So I just want to keep like I just want to go as anywhere as possible, as much as possible, and get all the experience I can.
Right. Whoever wants the ass beat by Viva Van, there you go. And there's just so much wrestling around the world, and like the
Mhm.
culture varies from area to area. The type of wrestling in Japan is definitely not the same as it is, say, over on the UK scene. So it's really
Yeah.
something to immerse yourself in the long run. So I hope it does happen. Rooting for you. But yeah, let's jump right into an advocacy that both of us share, and we are very very strongly believing in, which is the Southeast Asian representation in wrestling. So
Mhm.
you've openly spoken about how proud you are of being the first Vietnamese American women's wrestler, and I've heard your
Mhm.
story, and I feel like it's very inspiring to hear and to share with other people. But I wanted to ask, like, how important is it to you to represent the Vietnamese/Southeast Asian culture in wrestling over there in the United States?
It's very important because even though like some people might think that because I'm already in the US that it is a lot easier for me, it's actually
It's
is
actually much
actually
harder.
just as hard because if you look at like the history of WWE and the history of AEW, even though AEW has been here way less than WWE, there hasn't been really any signed Southeast Asian wrestlers, right?
Right,
So it's a door that we all have to break down and just, hopefully like forcefully make room for ourselves.
right, right,
And I
right.
feel
And I
like it's a topic that not many people talk about or more of like maybe it's an Asian culture thing where we're taught to not speak up on things like that and just put our heads down and keep
yeah,
working. But I'm a little different where I'm like my hell bent side, I'm just like, no,
right,
I'm gonna
right.
make it known. I want it to be known. There are no Southeast Asian wrestlers signed anywhere. And so I will represent that as much as I can and I hope I can help other people one day. And I'm
Right,
like, another goal of mine is to one day sponsor Southeast Asian wrestlers over here to come have a US tour. How cool would that
right.
be? So we have more
That would be insane.
representation everywhere globally.
Right, right. There isn't really much Southeast Asian talent who get to showcase their stuff over on the big leagues, or let alone be in the United States. So whenever it
Mhm.
does happen, it will be a monumental victory for all of us, even for myself as a fan. I feel like the closest we have right now is Shotzi, who's half Filipina over on
Yes.
SmackDown.
Yeah,
But that one woman is not enough for a division. That's not enough
exactly. We
at
need
all.
more.
Right. We need women like you. We need women like Alexis Lee over in Singapore, women like Crystal,
Yes.
North Phoenix, Diana. There's so much potential talents
Yes.
that could make it big abroad. So hopefully it
Hmm.
does happen in the future.
It will. We just have to keep pushing forward. That's all. It's hard. It is
Right.
hard. Like, trust me, it's really hard. I know, but we just have to keep pushing forward. That's the only thing we can do.
True, true. And if there's anyone who could do it, it's definitely the Southeast Asian coast because they know I know how hungry they are and they know how much they've fought for it. So the
Hmm.
time will come eventually. I can feel
Yes.
it. I can feel it. And
Hmm.
we're sort of on the way there, starting small over here in Southeast Asia. As you
Yeah.
did mention earlier, we just had the first women's match one-on-one in Vietnam, which I can only imagine how proud you were because of that. Because it featured Alexis Lee, the SPW Queen of Asia champion, defending her title against Crystal, Queen of Philippine Wrestling. So I wanted to ask you, since you did help out with VPW starting out with their own ring and everything,
Hmm.
what were your initial reactions when you found out about a women's match in Vietnam?
So me and Rocky, we've been talking about like when I was gonna come over there and when I've been trying, but it's just things happen and where I have to
Yeah,
cancel. So he moved forward with like with the girls that he picked for January, which is I'm all for it because I want to see that. I want to see more
right,
women wrestling, and I was hoping that more students in Vietnam, I would see more girls in there too. So I'm all for it. I'm happy, even though like it would be cool to be the one to be the first women's match there. But I'm
Right.
just happy to see other girls do it too. The more the merrier. I want to see more girls at VPW.
Of course, of course. Well, technically, there hasn't been a Vietnamese female to wrestle there because Alexis is Singaporean, Crystal is
Yes.
Filipino. So there's still that room there. If ever you want to come over to Vietnam, maybe I'll try to make a trip happen since
Yeah,
it's
we've
just
talked
2 hours
about it
away.
like with Rocky, where we're like maybe we'll bring Zeta over, Zeta Zhang or Sumi Sakai. Like we've had talks about it, but it's just very hard for me to leave my schedule as of now. I hope I can come by. Oh, I really want to check it out because I see like they're thriving. They're booking so many like shows and so many people show up to it. It just seems like a great place to be at.
Right, right. I'd love to see you hang in there with Alexis Lee, sort of. I mean, you said you wanted to get to 10 championships, the SPW Queen of Asia championships. It's hanging in the balance, but yeah, there's just
Yay,
so
I'm
much
all for
amazing
it.
talent there. Right.
Yeah,
So,
I love
yeah,
what she's got going on. I love her look. So I would love to step
right.
in
You
the ring with
guys
her.
you guys sort of have a similar vibe with the whole like dark alternative chic style. So, I'd love to see you guys duke it out in the ring, but in the future when it does happen. But with that being said, I do want to close this episode off with a question for you when it comes to the representation. Do you think we're going in the right direction in terms of representation in the States? And do you think there are some other steps that perhaps promotions can take when it comes to improving their Southeast Asian representation?
I think we are going the right step. I obviously, if we have more people, like being proud to represent Southeast Asian, like speak up on it, because I know a lot of people are scared to speak up on it. If more people are happy and proud to speak up on it, I think this will get going way faster. And for other promotions, like just we're here, and
Right.
we can go just like anyone else. And there's a lot of us, and we just need that opportunity and that chance.
Right. So if anyone out there is listening as a promoter of wrestling, give our women a chance, give our Southeast Asian women a chance, give Asian women a chance in general. There's
Yeah.
so much you guys can bring to the table that not every single female wrestler can do. So, you know,
Yeah.
we'd love to see it. We'd love to see it when it does happen. But thank you so much, Viva, for sort of helping lead like the representation of Southeast Asian females in wrestling. You're doing amazing, and we are all rooting for you all the way here, halfway across the globe. I hope our support is enough with what we can do. But yeah, you're doing amazing for yourself.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Of course. And I also do want to thank you for coming on the show. I know schedules have been conflicting, but I'm super happy to have spoken with you. And I hope you enjoyed your time on the show somehow.
I did. I had a great time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much as well. But before I do let you off, I'd like to give you a chance to sort of plug in your socials, any promotions that you'd like to promote, or any bookings you have. Feel free to share them over here.
You guys can find me on IG, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter at Hellbent Vixen, even though I just lost my verification check on Twitter
Right.
today. But it's still at Hellbent Vixen, so that's where you can find me.
Right, right. Well, there you go. Be sure to support Viva and support all of our other Southeast Asian female wrestlers. Let's go ahead and make this change. But yeah, thank you so much for listening, everyone. And in my case, for the latest news with Turning Heel with Troy Gonzalez, be sure to follow the show on all platforms where you can listen to by checking out my link tree. That's linktr.ee/turning heel podcast. So thank you for all of your support, Contribitas. Thank you once again, Viva, for coming on the show. It really means a lot to me. And I hope to see you all in the next episode. Bye.